Have you noticed that simple things do not feel as smooth as they used to feel? Sometimes, a familiar phone number suddenly disappears from your mind. Even words you were about to say seem to stop right at the edge of your mouth. You may stand up and feel slightly unsteady for a moment. You may walk down a few steps and wonder why your balance feels different. You may notice that your speech sounds a little heavier than usual, or that one hand does not feel quite as quick or as strong as before. Many older adults brush off these moments because they seem small and temporary. It is easy to blame age fatigue, poor sleep stress, or simple distraction. But the body often sends quiet warnings long before a serious problem becomes obvious. Major illness rarely appears out of nowhere. In many cases, it builds slowly inside ordinary daily life while small signs come and go without receiving enough attention. Problems involving circulation to the brain can develop in exactly this way. They can begin silently. They can progress without pain. They can hide behind symptoms that seem ordinary and easy to excuse. That is why they are so easy to miss and so important to understand. Many people imagine that a stroke must be dramatic from the first second. They think it only matters when someone suddenly collapses or cannot move. Yet the body may offer smaller changes well before that moment. Trouble finding words slower, understanding unusual dizziness, temporary numbness, brief weakness, mild facial asymmetry, or sudden clumsiness can all deserve attention. Especially concerning are episodes that appear and then disappear, because temporary changes can still be warning signs of a larger event ahead. Some people look back after a serious episode and realize they had been receiving signals for weeks or months. They remember feeling slightly off balance. They remember dropping utensils for no clear reason. They remember a strange heaviness in the head or brief moments when speaking felt more difficult than normal. At the time, it was easy to dismiss. Later, those small episodes seem much more important. That is why learning to recognize quiet signs matters so much. The brain depends on steady blood flow. More than many people realize, when blood vessels gradually narrow or become less healthy, the brain may not receive oxygen and nutrients as well as it should. The result is not always pain. Often, it is subtle, slowing, mild confusion, poorer balance, less clear speech, or a growing sense that the body is not responding with its old steadiness. The pathway to a major event usually begins much earlier than the event itself. Blood vessels do not simply close in a moment for no reason. They change over time. Repeated exposure to high blood pressure, high blood sugar, unhealthy fats, smoking, poor sleep, inactivity, dehydration, chronic stress, and imbalanced meals can all contribute to damage within the vessel walls. The body tries to repair those damaged areas, but repeated irritation can lead to inflammation, thickening, and stiffening of the vessel lining over time. The passage for blood becomes narrower and less flexible. When that happens, even a small clot or a sudden change in circulation can cause a serious problem. The danger is not only in the final blockage. The danger also lies in how quietly the whole process can move forward. A person may feel mostly fine while the body is under strain day after day. That is why prevention matters more than people often think. By the time a major neurological emergency becomes obvious, some of the damage may already be difficult to reverse. This is not meant to create fear. It is meant to create awareness. Fear makes people freeze. Awareness helps people act. Early attention to change and consistent improvement in daily habits can lower risk and protect quality of life. Far too many people wait for the body to shout when it has actually been whispering for a long time. The message is not that every small symptom means disaster. The message is that repeated or unusual changes deserve respect. They deserve observation, and when needed, they deserve timely medical attention. It is also important to understand that aging alone does not explain everything. Many people assume that forgetfulness, slower speech, fatigue, and unsteadiness are simply natural parts of getting older. Some age-related change is real, of course, but not every new difficulty should be accepted without question. Lifestyle plays an enormous role in how blood vessels age and how the brain functions over time. Two people of the same age can look very different in their energy, memory, balance, and clarity of speech. The difference is not only genetics, it is also the result of years of eating, sleeping, moving, recovering, and managing stress. The body responds to repetition. Daily choices matter because they are repeated. So often a meal pattern built around salty, processed, greasy, or heavily sweetened foods creates a very different internal environment than one built around vegetables, beans, fish, whole grains, nuts, fruit, and balanced portions. Good health is rarely built by a miracle ingredient. It is built by patterns that reduce strain and support recovery. Eating too fast, eating too late. Skipping one meal and overeating at the next, relying on packaged snacks or fried foods. And neglecting hydration can all make the internal environment harder on the vessels and harder on the brain. On the other hand, eating meals at more regular times, choosing simpler foods, reducing excessive sodium and including fiber and protein can support steadier blood pressure, steadier blood sugar, and better energy through the day. Small improvements in food choices may not feel dramatic at first, but they matter because the body is being shaped every day. One of the most overlooked factors is hydration. Many older adults drink too little because they do not feel thirsty, or because they want to avoid frequent trips to the bathroom, but low fluid intake can contribute to fatigue, dizziness, and poorer circulation. People often wait for thirst as a signal, yet thirst becomes less reliable with age. Drinking small amounts regularly through the day is often more helpful than drinking very little. And trying to make up for it later, movement is just as important. The body is designed to circulate better when it moves. This does not mean extreme exercise is required. Gentle daily walking, getting up regularly from a chair, moving after meals, stretching the legs, and maintaining light activity can all support circulation and help preserve balance. The less the body is used, the more quickly stiffness, weakness, and low endurance can develop. It becomes easier to avoid movement and harder to restart it, which creates a cycle that works against healthy aging. Sleep deserves equal respect. Poor sleep changes how the body handles stress, pressure, sugar, and inflammation. Loud, snoring, frequent waking, or apparent pauses in breathing during sleep may be more than a nuisance. They can affect cardiovascular and brain health over time. Rest is not laziness. It is one of the ways the body repairs itself. Chronic stress also leaves a mark. When a person lives in constant tension, the body acts as if it is always preparing for danger. The heart works harder, blood pressure may rise, muscles stay tight, and recovery becomes less complete. That kind of constant internal pressure is not good for blood vessels or for the nervous system. Learning to slow breathing, spend a little quiet time each day, and reduce unnecessary stimulation can be more protective than many people realize. Another important point is that symptoms are not always dramatic or permanent. A person may feel unsteady for a few minutes and then feel normal again. Speech may briefly sound strange and then return to usual. A hand may feel weak for a short time and then recover. These episodes are easy to ignore precisely because they do not last. But temporary symptoms can still matter greatly. Sometimes they are early warnings that circulation was briefly interrupted before a larger event occurs later. Waiting to see whether it happens again without changing anything can be risky. Families often play a critical role because loved ones may notice what the individual does. Not a spouse might notice a facial change. A child might hear that speech sounds slightly slurred. A friend might see that walking looks uneven, or that responses are slower than usual. These observations should not be dismissed as overreaction. Sometimes those around us recognize change before we are ready to admit it ourselves. Pride, embarrassment, or the hope that things will improve on their own can delay action. Unfortunately, the brain is not an organ that benefits from delay when blood flow is involved. The best approach is not panic, but prompt attention. Notice the change, name the change, and seek evaluation when something is new, unusual, or repeated. No one should feel foolish for checking something important. It is far better to be cautious early than regretful later. Prevention begins long before an emergency. It begins in ordinary routines. It begins at the table with what fills the plate. It begins in the cup with how much water is taken in. It begins with whether a person sits all day or stands and walks now and then. It begins with how late the evening meal is, whether sleep is protected, and whether stress is constantly allowed to accumulate. People often search for a dramatic secret to protect health, but daily consistency is usually far more powerful than dramatic short-term effort. There is no need to change everything in one day. In fact, Trying to become perfect overnight often leads to frustration and abandonment. A better path is to start with one practical change and keep it long enough to make it normal. Drink water more regularly. Walk for a short time after meals. Reduce heavily salted side dishes. Avoid very late-night snacks. Add one extra serving of vegetables. Choose fish or beans more often. Replace some fried meals with simpler options. Sit less and rise more frequently. Protect the sleep schedule. Even when the day feels busy, each small step may seem modest, but together they shift the body in a better direction. Health is rarely lost in one moment, and it is rarely rebuilt in one moment. Either, the process is gradual in both directions. That truth can be discouraging for those who want instant improvement. But it can also be encouraging because it means better outcomes can begin with small, sustainable effort. If a person improves daily habits before a major event occurs, the brain and blood vessels may be spared from avoidable damage. Even after some decline has begun, the body can still respond to better routines. It is never helpful to assume it is too late to care for the body. Older adults sometimes believe that because they already have high blood pressure, diabetes, or high cholesterol, the damage is done, and there is little point in trying. That is not a useful way to think. Medication can be important, and medical care matters greatly. But daily habits still shape the internal environment every single day. Better meals, steadier movement, good hydration, and consistent sleep do not replace proper care, but they can strengthen the foundation on which good care works. Another common mistake is waiting for severe pain before taking symptoms seriously. Not every dangerous process causes pain in the early stages. Trouble with circulation to the brain may show up as function change rather than pain. That means the person may notice changes in speech, memory, balance, vision, or coordination, rather than obvious physical discomfort. This is why awareness must go beyond the question of whether something hurts. The better question is whether something feels different from normal, and whether that difference is happening more often. Protecting the brain is not only about avoiding catastrophe, it is also about preserving independence. The ability to walk, steadily speak, clearly think, clearly manage daily tasks, and enjoy time with family depends heavily on healthy circulation and brain function. Many older adults say they simply want to remain capable. They want to move around on their own, hold conversations, remember appointments, enjoy meals, and participate in family life. Those goals are deeply connected to vessel health and early attention to warning signs. This is also why family habits matter. When one person in the household tries to change alone, it is easier to forget, easier to give up, and harder to stay consistent. But when the family chooses lighter meals together, keeps healthier food visible, reminds one another to drink water and take short walks together, the process becomes simpler. Support turns intention into routine. A short reminder spoken with care can make a real difference. Have you had water today? Did you walk after lunch? Are you feeling more unsteady than usual? These are small questions, but they help create a safer environment. The body tends to reveal truth in patterns if dizziness happens more often, if speech is occasionally less clear, if one side feels weak from time to time, if balance seems unreliable. Those patterns deserve attention. The most dangerous words can sometimes be, "It is probably nothing," especially when they are repeated again and again in the face of change. Respecting symptoms does not mean living in fear. It means refusing to ignore information. The body is providing. The goal is not anxiety, the goal is responsiveness. People who remain attentive to small changes often place themselves in a better position to prevent larger harm. There is also hope in the fact that everyday life offers many chances to protect the brain. A lighter hand with salt, a little less processed food, a little more water. A regular sleep time, a slower, calmer response to stress, a little more walking, and less sitting. These are not dramatic actions. Yet they are meaningful precisely because they are realistic. Realistic habits are the ones that last. Lasting habits are the ones that shape health over time. That is why the best plan is not the most extreme plan. It is the plan a person can continue through ordinary weeks, ordinary meals, and ordinary moods. Some days will not go perfectly. That does not mean the effort is failing. It simply means the next meal, the next walk, and the next good night of sleep still matter. Consistency is not perfection, it is returning to what helps again and again. The quiet danger in brain circulation problems is that they can progress without much noise. The quiet strength in prevention is that it also works quietly. Day by day, meal by meal, step by step. The body responds. If you notice that you or someone you love has been more forgetful, more unsteady, more difficult to understand, or more easily fatigued, do not rush to blame age alone. Notice the change. Take it seriously. Check when appropriate and start strengthening the daily routine at the same time. A healthy future is rarely built by luck alone. It is built by attention, by repetition, and by respect for the body's signals. In the end, the message is simple. The body often speaks softly before serious trouble arrives. Small episodes of dizziness, brief. Speech difficulty, temporary weakness. Unusual imbalance and repeated confusion should not be brushed aside at the same time. The ordinary habits of everyday life are not ordinary in their effect. They shape pressure, sugar inflammation, energy, recovery, and circulation across the years. Today's plate, today's cup of water, today's walk, and today's decision not to ignore a warning sign can all help shape tomorrow's brain health. The best time to care for the body is not after everything falls apart. It is while the body is still giving us chances to listen that chance exists today. It begins in very small choices and it grows through steady care. The danger may be silent, but attention can be stronger. Silence does not have to win when awareness becomes part of daily life.